Today's show, the Capitals' winning streak grinds to a halt in Vancouver, and the Carolina Hurricanes are arming up for a playoff push.
Your Locked On Capitals, your daily podcast on the Washington Capitals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Well, hello and welcome into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Dan Holme. I've covered the Capitals for the last 3 seasons for Locked On and various other outlets before that. I'm also the host of the weekly show called The Capitals Minutecast, available wherever you find your podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Super Bowl 59 is here, and there's no better way to make every playoff more exciting than with FanDuel Sportsbook. New customers can bet $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. Download the app or head to fanduel.com to get started. So in this edition of Locked On Capitals, we talk about the Capitals as their winning streak. Their point streak comes grinding to a halt in Vancouver. What was behind their loss? I'll talk about that. A little bit later, I will talk about the Carolina Hurricanes as they made a big move, a big trade, as they are arming up for a playoff push. They acquired players Mikko, Rantanen, and Taylor Hall via trade. What does that mean for the Hurricanes and the Capitals? And then in the final segment, I'll talk about Ryan Leonard as he has been on fire all season, and most notably here recently with Boston College. But just to get it going here, as they say, all good things must come to an end. And all things considered, watching the game, I thought to myself, they're not going to win them all. And, that's not the attitude that you want to take. But sometimes you can kind of just take your finger, stick it to the air, and get kind of the temperature in which direction the winds are blowing. And I had a hunch. I had a feeling just after watching the first period that this would not be a game that the Capitals walked away winning. The Vancouver netminder was dialed in. Charlie Lindgren, all things considered, made many top shelf saves that if he was not playing in top form, or say it was less of a netminder, the Capitals would have probably lost by a larger margin. It was about missed assignments. It was about poor execution. All things that I think the Capitals can work on going forward. But if you take a look at their recent string of games here, this team is playing well. There are certain things that need to get cleaned up. And with the Carolina Hurricanes nipping at their heels, maybe some moves will need to take place. I'll talk about that a little bit later, but let's do that. Let's dive into the most recent game here, of course, against the Vancouver Canucks. It was a game that had a lot of promise. And it was a game that saw the Capitals looking to extend their form of what we saw before and extend their winning streak, maybe get back to the basics that we saw in the beginning of the season where they were generating more chances and had more success 5-on-5. But unfortunately, it didn't go as planned as we saw our impressive 12-game point streak and 6-game win streak come grinding to a halt with a 2-1 loss to the Canucks. Again, it wasn't a horrible game, and there were some bright spots in the game, but you take a look at it, the Vancouver Canucks and their head coach, Tuck, had gave them the riot act that this was a must-win game. And it's interesting that it's somewhat earlier-ish, I guess, in the season. We're on the midway point of the season, but there's still plenty of hockey left to play, that he really relayed the message to the team that this was a must-win game. Because this team is fighting for the playoffs as well. There's a lot of turmoil within that team that they are trying to get back on track. And they wanted to do that against the Capitals. And I think that is why we saw the very best Canucks team out there. But let's get into the stats and kind of where the Capitals are at. That 12-game point streak tied for 7th longest in franchise history. And it was the first time we've seen a streak of that length since 2019-2020. It's 2025, so that has been quite some time. And if you take a look back then, that was coming off the Stanley Cup winning season. The Capitals winning the Stanley Cup in 2018. A great team back then, but what I'm going to say right now, this team, this roster is even better than that team. And it's a more well-rounded team. And these risky moves that Brian McClellan made in the offseason haven't been that risky at all. They've actually paid off quite swimmingly. So you take a look at that. That was a big deal. But as they say, all good things must come to an end. And, I quoted this on the show not long ago. It was from 24/7 Caps Pens, one of my favorite series and a fun time in Capitals history is, the Capitals are playing well, but don't judge them solely on how they're playing right now. And don't judge a poor team that's who ultimately they are. That's not their identity. If you want to see that exemplified, take a look at the New York Rangers, who seemed kind of DOA just a couple weeks ago, a month or so ago. They are actually now in a playoff push. That was a team that traded their captain. That was a team that really kind of shook up a whole lot of things. Just what I'm trying to say here is the Capitals are riding high. Might not always be that way. I really hope that it is, but they need to buckle down, as it is going to be a wild ride for the rest of the season. Pivotal moments in this game. Pierre-Luc Dubois has been nothing short of stellar all season. I've talked about that on the show. And him scoring that goal late gave us a flicker of hope for a comeback. We've seen that from the Capitals all season, that this is not last year's Capitals team or the year before, that this team has some pushback, some tenacity, some resolve to get back in the game. It's just that the Vancouver Canucks and their netminder had a bigger goal of winning a game, and that's ultimately what they did. But overall, the Caps really struggled to execute their plays throughout the full 60 minutes, and that's something that you hear all the time. Maybe you could see it printed on the front of a show. Play a 60-minute game. Of course, the Capitals wanted to do that, but they got the very best version of the Vancouver Canucks out on the ice last night. Kevin Lankinen was just phenomenal, stopping 32 shots and making it tough for the Capitals to gain any traction. And the Capitals have been on the other end of that, really have benefited from strong netminders and Logan Thompson primarily and Charlie Lindgren, that now the shoe was on the other foot and Kevin Lankinen was stellar in net. But recognizing the effort, giving credit where the credit's due, despite the final score, I want to give a nod to the Caps for effort. It wasn't a perfect game, but it wasn't a horrible game. They maintained possessions and created a bunch of scoring chances. Those were things that head coach Spencer Carberry said that they need to work on more often. Crashing the net, driving the net, and good things will happen. The things that worked well for the Capitals to start the season. You take a look at the Pierre-Luc Dubois goal, hanging out in front of the net, looking for deflection, second opportunities, third opportunities. It really paid off. Now, Dubois did manage to close the gap to 2-1 in the third, which increased my hope that this team would rally. Of course, it wasn't the case. Let's not forget Dubois has been our guy against Vancouver this season, scoring all three of our goals in matchups with him. Again, it's those crazy numbers that certain players have certain teams' numbers, or they play really well in a certain venue. I'm not really sure what's behind that, but in any event, PLD has been stellar against the Canucks. Now, an interesting fact about all of this and how well the Capitals are playing, it speaks volumes. A fun fact, the PLD is now ninth Capital to hit double digits in goals this season, joining a select group. And this is not, the Capitals team that you remember from years ago, or was Alex Ovechkin and maybe two other great players. This team has scoring up and down the lineup. And it's also worth noting that we're one of only two NHL teams to have 9 players with double-digit goals. Pretty impressive, I got to say. Second line highlights, we saw a bit of mixing and matching out there. Alexei Protas got in there fighting for the puck and assisting on Dubois' goal, extending his point streak to 4 games. Alexei Protas has been huge. His game has grown by leaps and bounds. And, and I'll talk about a little bit later in the show in the second segment that, what would happen if an Alexei Protas or PLD got injured? What would that mean for this team? I don't want to go down that tributary right now, but Alexei Protas, huge. And Alex Ovechkin, we know that he is chasing down Wayne Gretzky. And a lot of the goals that he's gotten here somewhat recently have been empty netters. And that seems, I don't know, in the eyes outside of the Capital circles, it doesn't seem like as legit, I guess, as you could say. But he did lead the team with 7 shots. So you take a look at it. He still is on track to catch Gretzky this season, but we hope that he can string together more back-to-back goal games, multi-goal games, that kind of thing. But it's ultimately really great to see him generating chances, something that head coach Spencer Carberry said that they need to work on. We saw a little bit of a mix-up with the first and second line. The shift in chemistry seemed to put some extra pressure on Vancouver, but we just couldn't capitalize. And ultimately, it was kind of a fluid situation as we saw some mixing and matching by Spencer Carberry to try and generate some offense, as a good coach should. Rarely do you see an NHL coach saying, no, this is what I'm going with. This is what I penciled out to start the game. That there was a little bit of flexibility there. But goaltending, if I was going to give my first star of the game, it would be to Charlie Lindgren. Again, if I'm shooting the arrows, I'm giving out the applause. He made some 10 bell saves. And the one, if you didn't get a chance, you must be living under a rock or not on social media, is that he was heading off the ice for an extra attacker. And the Canucks got the puck and were driving for the net. And he had to race back to the net and dive out like a shortstop to make a save. Quite a stunning save for Chucky, the outlaw, Charlie Lindgren. So it's interesting, the battle back and forth. And like I say on the show, I don't like to have favorites. I want the best netminder on any given night, but Charlie was huge. LT has been huge. So it's time to give him his flowers here as well. Charlie Lindgren made some great stops, finishing with 23 saves, some high danger chances. And, take a look at it. It was a low-scoring affair, so definitely he kept the Capitals in the mix. Despite the loss, though, he showcased his talent with that stunning diving save, and not just that one. Many saves that I think less of a netminder would not make. And to be clear here, I think that Charlie Lindgren still, this is me, the way I still think is kind of fighting for his future on the Capitals. I think that unless the Capitals can't afford to give Logan Thompson what he wants, I think that, then it could go to Charlie Lindgren. But if they could come to terms with a deal with Logan Thompson, I don't think that, they're going to have both the netminders on there. I want to give him his credit. I don't want to go down that whole road right now, but what I'm saying, a great game for Charlie Lindgren. It's making it interesting for Chris Patrick and the Capitals. But to put a bow on this segment, the Capitals will need to reflect on the tough loss, learn from it, and focus on maintaining consistency for a full 60-minute game. As you take a look at it here, the Capitals and their schedule coming up here, is that the way it was laid out is that Charlie played back-to-back so that Logan Thompson ostensibly can be in against the Flames. Chuck, he'll probably get the game against the Senators, and it'll be LT back in net versus the Jets. This is some prime hockey. This is must-win games. Buckle up, Capitals fans. It is going to be a wild ride. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about the Carolina Hurricanes shooting a shot right across the Capitals' bow saying, hey, you're in first place. Did you see what we're doing? And we're coming for you. And what are you going to do about it? I'll discuss all of that much more straight ahead. Keep it right here. Super Bowl 59 is here. One game, two teams, endless possibility, and there's no better way to make every play more exciting than with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Whether it's predicting the first touchdown, calling the MVP, or betting on the coin toss, FanDuel makes it easy to get on the action. With live betting all game long, you can adjust your bets as the game unfolds and feel the thrill from kickoff to the final whistle. And listen, my team's not in the playoffs anymore. If you're listening to this show, I'm guessing your team's not in the playoffs anymore. But how about having vested interest in the Super Bowl winner? Open up the FanDuel app, put a little bit of money on the game. All of a sudden, the Super Bowl got that much more exciting. So download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. Bet just $5, and if you win, you'll score $200 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Bet with FanDuel, official partner of Super Bowl 59. Okay, welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team. Every day you can find me over on Twitter. It's at DanCaps218. You can find the show on Twitter. It's at Locked On Caps. And I want to thank all of you for making this your first listen of the day. If you're watching this on YouTube, a bit of a programming note. I have some sick kids sleeping downstairs, so I have to record with where I can record. All right, in this next segment here, we're talking about the big movement that took place over the weekend. The Carolina Hurricanes coming out swinging. Capitals, we're coming for you. What are you going to do about it? Let's take a look at the standings before we even dig into this segment. It is going to be a battle royale towards the end of the season. The Capitals with 71 points, the Carolina Hurricanes with 64. These games are of utmost importance. You cannot sleep on any of these opponents that we're coming up on, whether they're a good team or a poor team. The Capitals need to capitalize and make the most and accumulate as many points as they possibly can. If the Hurricanes, the Devils, the Jackets, the Rangers, any of those teams went on a heater and the Capitals stumbled and fell down the stairs a little bit, that could be all she wrote for the Capitals this season. We don't want that to happen. The Capitals are sitting high right now, but that could change in a hurry if they stumbled or if injuries take place. What did the Carolina Hurricanes do to really address their situation? A major move over the weekend. Again, I know that this is a Capitals podcast, but if you have your ear to the NHL at large, a big move. The Carolina Hurricanes made a blockbuster move by acquiring Mikko Rantanen from the Avalanche and Taylor Hall from the Chicago Blackhawks via trade. Talk about a mic drop. What are you going to do about it? Now, is this going to pay off? In the first game that we saw, it didn't really, but I'm sure that they're getting acclimated with the teams and that kind of thing. But on paper, this could be a game changer for the Hurricanes. I was watching briefly Locked On Hurricanes, and the host of that show was beyond over the moon excited about that, as he should be. Could you imagine the Capitals right now with a player like Mikko Rantanen? This team is next level right now. They would be outside of this universe if they had a guy like Mikko Rantanen on the team. Taylor Hall, it's not bad. I'd rather take the Taylor Hall from, several years ago. But in any event, big changes and quite a statement by the Hurricanes. These additions could really boost their chances to transform them into serious contenders overnight. They were kind of flailing there for a while because, they lost some big players in the offseason. This changes everything. Now the Hurricanes gave up some talent as well. Again, if you want to get something big, you're going to have to give up something big. Martin Necas and Jack Drury by adding Rantanen, currently ranked 6th in the NHL in scoring, and Hall is a bold strategy as well. Again, sometimes these don't always pay off. Take a look at Nashville, for example. That sometimes the best laid plans go to waste. But on paper, this team is going to be stunning. Let's take a look at where the Caps are right now. We've got a fantastic record of 33-10-5, making us the first team to hit the 70-point mark this season. And, a big shout out to the acquisitions that Brian McClellan, these risky moves. You take a look at Chychrun, Dubois, Logan Thompson. I think it's safe to say if the Capitals had not acquired these players, we would not be in the position that we're at right now. And on top of that, the internal talent, Alex Ovechkin, is doing Alex Ovechkin things, leading the team with 22 goals and continues to chase down Gretzky. Players that have really blown up, Dylan Strome, Alexei Protas are both over 40 points, and Tom Wilson, the future captain, joined the 20-goal club. That's what I'm talking about. It is leadership. It is, just demolishing the rest of the teams by committee. These great players are really stepping up. And, a player that got an opportunity, and there was a lot of question marks. He's a fast skater, but what kind of skater is he going to be? What kind of player? Ethan Frank has been huge for the Capitals. And we've got to be honest about some areas where we need to improve. One concern is our offensive consistency at 5-on-5 play. Seen a bit of improvement here, kind of ebbs and flows. Frank has definitely provided a boost, but we still need to enhance our third line and improve overall chemistry among our forwards. You take a look at it. Lars Eller, third line center. Again, I was a lot more excited when it first happened. Now I'm like, it hasn't really lived up to what I had hoped for. You take a look at, we've had Scarbosa, Hendricks Lapierre cycle through there, not to mention on the wing there. Now it's Ethan Frank, but we've seen Vrana, Milano, Miroshnichenko. That, this team is good now, but could you imagine if Protas got injured or PLD got injured, or if both of those players got injured at the same time? I mean, I guess we could just call someone from Hershey and call up Miroshnichenko or Lapierre. Oh, wait, we already did that this season. They're nowhere near those players' level, so that's what this team is going to have to do, is be built for a push. It's like taking your car out with any insurance. Hey, look at my car, got hit. Guess what? That car's not so nice anymore. The Capitals need insurance to weather any storm. We have some good talent down in Hershey, but is it up to facing the best talent in the NHL? I mean, let's be honest. We've seen some of the talent that we've talked about here. Those players are not going to replace Protas and PLD, Ovechkin or Strome. We need that depth. Now, what are some of the players that they've kicked the tires on? Brock Nelson from the Islanders and Yanni Gourde from the Kraken. A cautionary tale here is rentals. And I know what I just said. We need to bolster. If we could make this into a deal, a longer-term deal, I'm all about it. But I don't want to give up a premier talent for rental. I guess, if we have to, I guess what I'm trying to say, just based on the depth concerns on this team, then I guess you would have to. I don't like it. But it is, you take a look at the risk that the Hurricanes take. And at the end of the day, it's about winning this season. It's not about winning, years from now. And I talk about that on the show, the perils of win now mode. But Ovechkin is here this year, next year, and that's the end of his contract, right? He could come back, but I mean, he's going to be 40 next year. So there is a certain sense of urgency that this season needs to be the season. Brian McClellan did the big things. Let's see if we can really keep this ball rolling and see where the Capitals could possibly lead. A deep push, a Stanley Cup victory. I'm not afraid to dream. All right, so coming up here after the break, we'll talk about Ryan Leonard, who has been absolutely huge at Boston College on the international stage. And my assessment is that I'm honestly glad that he decided to play one more season down there. I'll give you my reason why straight ahead. Keep it locked. Welcome back into this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The best way that you can help grow the show is to subscribe to Locked On Capitals on YouTube and comment anything down below. All right, in this segment here, we're going to talk about a game changer in years, or maybe at the end of this season to come, Ryan Leonard, who is blowing up at Boston College here recently, but the whole season in total and the last couple seasons, to be honest with you here, what we saw on the international stage, what we've seen at Boston. Let's dig into what he's been doing here lately and, start drinking the Ryan Kool-Aid, or maybe pick out your favorite Capitals jersey and see it with a Leonard name tag on the back of it. Now, we're going to dive into some exciting news in the college world. I know that this is a Capitals podcast, but a premier talent in Ryan Leonard, his scoring prowess on display. Here recently, over the past week, Leonard has really showcased his incredible scoring prowess. And this isn't just lip service. He is quite a player. His latest highlights came during an electrifying home matchup where the top-ranked Boston College Eagles claimed a decisive 2-0 victory over the 8th-ranked Boston University Terriers. And a dominating performance here, to be sure. Over the last week, Leonard has showcased some, prowess out there, zigging and zagging, making some great plays. But what he did there, Leonard sealed the deal with an empty netter at just 1:03 left on the clock, bringing his tally to 4 goals against the Terriers in a home-and-home against Boston College. Absolutely dominated with an overall score of 8-2. So quite a goal over BU. And, you take a look at it, that I think that he made the wise decision. I know he sought the advice of his brother and his dad about what to do with his future. And ultimately, his game has just got better at Boston College and on the international stage. Quite something. And he also found a way to contribute early, assisting on the game's opening goal just 24 seconds into the first period. Key contributions. He's a fancy Dan, if you will. Fantastic zone entry. Took a shot that was saved by BU goaltender Yurgurov, and the rebound fell to Teddy Stigda for an easy tap in. Being in the right place at the right time, that is what he does. He's got that high hockey IQ. That victory marked Boston's college 6th consecutive win, and during that streak, Leonard has racked up an impressive 8 points with 7 goals and 1 assist. Can you start to see it in your mind's eye with the Capitals jersey on? Wow. You take a look at Crystal, Leonard. I'm super excited about this. So currently he sits at 27 points with 19 goals and 8 assists over 23 games played. His latest performance, Leonard is now just 1 goal away from tying Isaac Howard of Michigan State for the NCAA lead in goals. This guy, Capitals jersey, it is going to happen sooner than any of us think. And just pay attention to these games. It's an exciting matchup, as it's their last game before they head to TD Garden for this year's Beanpot tournament, where they'll kick off things against Northeastern Huskies. So Ryan Leonard is quite the player, and I am super excited to see what he has in the future. And the question, and some people say, Dan, well, you don't know how this is going to translate. This is just college hockey. And I hear that. But if he is just, even a fraction that great of a player on the Capitals, it'll be next level. You see some of these players, Connor Bedard, these kind of Celebrini, that, you take a look at Leonard, he is going to join the mix as the next wave of Capitals. Hate to say it, but Ovechkin is on the back 9 of his hockey career with the Capitals. Go ahead and take a Kleenex and wipe your eye. It's the truth. It's been a great career. And, John Carlson, all these players, it's going to be the changing of the guard. We've already seen this team get younger. It's going to get exponentially younger in the years to come. And Ryan Leonard fixes to be a key piece of that next wave. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, your only daily year-round podcast covering the Washington Capitals. And I want to thank all of you that listen on the audio side and watch this on YouTube. You are what makes this show successful. All right. Once again, I want to thank you for joining me on this edition of Locked On Capitals, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It is your team. It is every day. My name is Dan Holme, and I'll talk to you again next time.